couldn't fathom, like not being able to wipe my own butt or not being able to stand up. So I guess I can show you guys what my burns look like. It's worth noting that it is now daylight outside. I started recording this at like 10 to 6 in the morning because I don't record myself very often. It's tough for me to do things in one shoot, so there's going to be a lot of jump cuts. Bear with me. I'll try to make it as entertaining as I can and ignore the lighting differences for now. I'll try and be more efficient in future videos, but let's get started. This is my customized compression garment, and it's the first one I got. It's just black. Not at all what I'd asked for. So I said, well, back it up a little bit. I was told that at a burn conference, they'd seen all these new different colors and designs, and I was like, oh, that sounds really awesome. How do I get me some of that? And by the time I was finally ready for compression, I was just about out of the hospital. So it'd been about a month and a half. And I had asked for black with like hot rod flames. That's how I was making myself feel better about it. I said specifically, I was like, if you can't get flames, please get me any cool color, any cool pattern, anything, like just not plain black. And then this is what I ended up with, but it's not the end of the world. It does the job. I have some new garments on the way now. I just got resized a few days ago, and my new ones are going to be purple. So I'll be sure to show you guys those too and see the difference. And I'll have some more compression than I do right now. So to get started, I guess I can back you guys up. We've got hand and arm. I can also show you guys in another video how I put these on, but it takes a long time, so we'll avoid that for now. Alright, so I have like a little fingerless glove. And as you can see, there's just like a little zipper on top there. So I just stick my hand in and then zip that up. I have my arm sleeve here. Kind of looks like I'm in the NBA or something. Sorry, I know black on black. It's hard to see. And it has like these little rubber, I don't know if you can see those. They're like half spheres to grip your skin. So that way it doesn't slide down on you all the time. Really helpful. So there's my arm. Do you like my shirt? I hope no one's too offended by that, but my father-in-law got it for me, and he's got a similar sense of humor that I do. So first thing he got me was a Human Torch action figure to hang on my wall. Next thing he got me was this, and I've been sporting it proudly ever since. I cope with humor, so that's how I was making myself feel better about it. I said, I apologize if I seem a little scatterbrained. I definitely have ADHD, and it makes it very, very difficult to stay on task, especially if I'm trying to focus on one subject. Because what I often do is I'll start talking about one thing, and then I'll get like on a side tangent, and then I'll just keep chasing that, going down different rabbit holes, and it's a bit of a cycle. I'm trying to break the habits, but a lot of it's hardwired and I can't change it, so might as well work with it. My point being, for future videos, I'm going to try not to jump from topic to topic quite as frequently. Sorry, real itchy there. Probably should have done that between cuts, but anyway. And I'll show you my burns. So that's what my foot looks like. That's my shin. And this right here is my donor site. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but that's where they took the strips from to fill in my leg and my arm. So they just shaved like a really thin layer. And then for my arm, you can see they just kind of used one big slab. But then for my leg, I have like this really cool bumpy texture here. It's smoothed out a lot now just from wearing the compression, but that is a different kind of skin graft. So they kind of like they run it through a machine and it turns into more of a mesh, and then they can just stretch it, cover more area. I figure I should probably also show you guys my left leg. and my left arm. There's nothing too special to see, so these are my 2nd-degree burns, so they're not full thickness. You can see it's kind of like one little patch here, and then I've got, a couple little spots on the top of my hand, but really nothing crazy. Like, I'm glad that you can't even really see that on camera. Anyway, take my word for it, but that was all burned. So what I do is I actually wrap this leg with an ace bandage, and the reason I do that is, it sounds kind of strange, but I need to squeeze the blood kind of out of my leg, because whenever I stand up, it pools under my skin, and that creates a lot of pain. Luckily, less so lately. Right about here would open up to like the size of a golf ball, and it was fairly deep. It got more shallow as it healed because it would just stretch out and kind of fill in at the same time. But anyway, I put that piece of cotton there just to stop it from rubbing, because it is a very scratchy material. As you can see, the burns made it all the way up to my bicep. Scorched my tattoo a little bit. That's okay. And then this is the bottom of my forearm. So this is where I said it was all white. I could see the nerves. So this was grafted. This is new skin from my leg. And then there's the side of my hand. And then the other side. There we go. So this is the side that gives me a lot of trouble. There's a scar band that runs from my thumb all the way to my elbow, if you see that. So anytime I go to do something, it's constantly tugging here, and that's why that hole keeps popping up. So what all this compression does is it basically flattens out the scar, and I also need to like pinch it, massage it, and moisturize it, which I need to do here especially. That keeps the scar healthy, and it stops it from turning into this big angry clump of scar tissue basically. And in about 4 months' time, I will be going back to see my plastic surgeon who put these lovely skin grafts on me. You'll probably see him in some later clips. He's really funny. But he's going to be doing a couple zigzags across this scar band, and then what's going to happen is that skin's going to shift over, and it's going to take the tension off my elbow. Last but not least, I promise I'm not flashing you. We have my leg. So this one's pretty big. It's going to be hard to get it all on camera. I'm actually going to move that back a little bit more so you guys can see better. Alright, so this is my leg, and it really took the brunt of the damage. You can see this is like way up almost to my butt, but not quite. And that's where the burns ended up. So it's got a little zipper here on the bottom. You unzip that. This is Tubi Grip, so it kind of does the same thing as my compression, but not quite as well, because it's not like, measured exactly for my body. But that's just so my foot doesn't get like a tourniquet effect. What can happen is with the compression, since it's so tight, it just like chokes your foot or whatever, appendage is burned. Take this off. And this is what we're looking at. So as you can see, all the way back, almost behind my leg, to all the way in front of my leg, kind of running down the middle, is a nice big burn. So this is 5 months of healing, and after 2 years, I think, this will start to go down to a more normal skin tone. It'll lose a lot of that redness. But myself personally, I don't really care about that. Like, it doesn't faze me. I'm sure a lot of people it probably does, and I understand that, but myself personally, I'm just very fortunate it wasn't my face. So anyway, here's the rest of my leg. So this is the foot that I'd already had issues with beforehand. As you can see, my shin is in really rough shape. and right here. So they grafted, kind of from my knee down in one chunk. And then everything under this, you can see, is kind of a different texture, right? So they didn't graft this foot whatsoever. And the reason that they didn't do that is because I'm going to be getting amputated. Not exactly sure when, but we discussed it in the hospital. And to be totally honest, I got a bit of a wrench thrown into my plans the other day when I went to go see my plastic surgeon, because I also met with my orthopedic surgeon who's going to be doing the amp. He kind of threw me a curveball because he pitched an ankle fusion to me instead of an amputation, which is what we've been talking about kind of since the beginning due to my previous ankle issues as well as new nerve pain. It makes sense to a degree, wanting to do the medical procedure that can be undone first. But I've spoken to a lot of people that have actually had the surgery, and I've done a lot of research on the potential drawbacks. And what I've found is that oftentimes it just doesn't heal well. Like, I would be probably 4 months in a cast before I could do anything whatsoever. And many, many people say that it took over a year before they could even rest their foot on the floor. And I don't know, that's just not really a position I can afford to be in with my son and my wife working. And 1 year is best case scenario. I mean, realistically, it could be 2 years plus, and that's just the initial healing. And if they need more surgeries after that, it could just be so complicated. Most people that end up getting the fusion end up needing an amputation anyway. So I don't know. It came across very strange because my entire care team from day one was on board with the amputation. And they even stopped grafting my leg because of that, they took measures based on that information. So now that we're changing the potential outcome, it's just a lot psychologically. You think you're prepared for one procedure and you do a lot of homework. You try to find as many people as you can to talk to within that group. And I thought I knew what I was getting into. But just trying to walk and stand up, it felt like my skin was on fire. I was actually challenged with a lot of different things that you don't ever really imagine that you will have to do for the first time again. And as an independent 23-year-old at the time, I couldn't fathom, not being able to wipe my own butt or not being able to stand up. And those are things I will never take for granted again. After a grueling month and a half of, learning how to walk again, surgery, recovery, and trying to find a new place to live, I finally made it out just in the nick of time for my father-in-law's wedding and an Offspring concert. So that was really nice because I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to make those events. To make it to the places that I wanted to be and just, get a real change of scenery. Even if I'm in a wheelchair, I don't care. It was so nice to feel like a person again. The only downside is at one of those two events, either the wedding or the concert, I got COVID. Luckily, Nova Scotia has some pretty loose COVID regulations, so it didn't stop me from coming back home. But it made it a whole lot more difficult, unnecessarily difficult, because I had a fever. It was really bad. You know how I brought up my body's ability to stay warm or cold, and the thermoregulation not really doing its job. So it kind of doubled down whenever I got COVID. So my fever spiked to 103.1 in Fahrenheit, and that's really not good. So even throughout all of my experiences in the hospital as an inpatient, that was the most concerned I had been, because I genuinely felt like something was wrong. At least with my care at the hospital, I knew I was in good hands, and I had people reassuring me the whole way through. But that fever really made me feel like garbage. I was genuinely concerned for my health for a little bit. We ended up going back to the hospital in Emerge, and they said, well, it's like a 7-hour wait, and you're not priority, even though you're burned and have COVID, tested positive. You can go sit and wait, or you can go home. It's up to you. So I figured I'd get better rest at home, and that's what we did. Definitely worth mentioning. When I say go home, I mean, like the place we were staying in Nova Scotia, because we were staying with my wife's grandmother, who was amazing, and I'm very thankful that we had that place to stay. They even gave us their bed. I tried not to bleed on it too much. And so after all that headache, a month and a half in the hospital, got COVID, had to move all of the stuff that we were donated with COVID. My wife also caught it from me. We rent a U-Haul, which was way more than we expected it to be. We were really worried because we got all the way back to the Confederation Bridge, which connects New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, for anyone who doesn't know. And the bridge was closed to high-sided vehicles due to the wind there. But luckily, it was like a half hour before they'd hit the bridge. A new notification from my grandmother popped up, who was watching the bridge status. And she'd said, oh, the bridge is open again. And I was just so relieved, because after all the headache, all the struggle, I really just wanted to be back home. And I didn't even know what my home was at this point. We were very fortunate to be able to secure this lovely Century home from Nova Scotia. We were able to work everything out remotely. My grandmother played a very large part in that too, checking the place out for us. But, we didn't really know exactly what we were getting into until we got back. And then being an older home, as much as it's lovely, when you're in a wheelchair and the floors are slanted and, there's little ledges between the doorways and stuff, I couldn't even check out my new house. I was confined to the bedroom and then the bathroom, because it was agonizing to try and get up and move around, even with the walker. It was so painful. So long story short, we finally get back home, and my wife and I both have COVID. We feel like crap, and we just want to curl up, watch some Netflix, hang out for a bit. But our internet provider couldn't set anything up until we got here. But then once we got here, we had to isolate because of COVID. So it was a long week before they were able to come in and get it set up. But I don't hold that against them. I wouldn't want to get them sick. But in the end, it was really all worthwhile just to be able to curl in and cuddle up with my wife again, because it got real lonely in that hospital, even with the visits and stuff. She can't jump up into my bed, so when you're used to having someone by your side every single night, and then you gotta sleep alone in an uncomfortable position, I had to sleep on my back because I couldn't rotate, and it was a lot. But thank you for taking the time to listen, and I didn't cry, so that's a plus. Not that I would cut that out or anything, but it's kind of hard for me to be vulnerable. And that's the reason I'm making a point of expressing my vulnerability, because if nothing else, I want these videos to be helpful for other people, helpful for myself, and they're very therapeutic in the hospital, as weird as that sounds, recording myself in pain. It's almost like a trophy or something, for lack of a better term, because you don't want to go through something this traumatic and not have anything to show for it. I know I've got the actual scars and stuff, but I don't know. It's nice on the bad days to be able to look back and see how far I've come. Alright, so my little guy's waking up. I need to go make him a bottle and scramble him some eggs, but towards the end here, I'll probably add in some footage from my earlier time at the hospital, and I'll make sure everything's censored, at least for this video, but I'll probably just add a disclaimer going forward for any videos that may be a little bit more graphic. Thank you again for your time and listening to me ramble. It really means a lot. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and enjoy this footage.
But sometimes it's too much. We overdo it. That's probably the case in burns, and it affects their healing. So if you can kind of have a bit of an anti-inflammatory effect, you keep it from overdoing it and actually allow kind of normal, proper healing to take place, which is a good thing. On top of the Acticoat, we put sterile water moistened sponges. You don't want to use saline. This is like the one must know about Acticoat effects, or any Acticoat. The saline, the chloride ion in normal saline will pull all the silver out right away. So you lose your 3-day sustained silver effect, and you get this like one-time toxic dose essentially of silver to the wound bed. It's so much dose all at once. It's probably hard on the healing process, so we avoid that.
So you use water, not saline.
You use water, not
That's
saline.
the big thing.
You got it. And we're done.
That was not going in me, right?
Just one a day.
Isn't it supposed to like keep the doctor away or something?
Yeah. Staples bring the doctor back. That's when you guys take him out at some point. You're screwed.
I'm stapled actually.
Yes, truly. I'll start using surgical screws. We'll see. Screw the grafts in place. Screw you, he says. Womp womp. Yeah. So, I mean, like, not super complicated, truthfully. I think people get a bit daunted by burn dressings. Lift up for one sec for me. Thank you. But the principle is usually simple. So, for very straightforward burns, we'll often just use something like a gel net and a gauze once a day. For folks who are pain control is more of an issue, or they're a little bit more fancy, sometimes we'll use the Acticoat. But that's most of what I do for burn dressings. Okay, you can come now.